webinar on how to reduce stress and anxiety in the world after quarantine in the new normal, what we call our new normal. We're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves. We are all practitioners and clinicians, and we would like to help you with some tips and some advice that might be helpful. My name is Kana Newton-Boom. I am the Clinical Director of Healing with Grace Counseling Center here in Henderson, Nevada.
Hello, my name is Wendy Ronovich, and I'm a practitioner at Healing with Grace. I'm an industrial organizational psychologist. I specialize in mindfulness, mindful leadership, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and as well mindful self-compassion. Happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Dr. Monique Martinez-Quiros. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor intern, and I specialize in crisis stabilization as well as the integrated health component to everything. So mind, body, soul, spirit, everything.
Hello, my name is Robert Allen. I am a board certified chaplain as well as a clinical professional counselor intern. My specialties deal with grief, anxiety, stress, to name a few.
Hello, everyone. My name is Angela Dela Cruz. I am a state licensed MFT intern, and I specialize in anxiety and depression. I too am happy to be here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley. I am the admin assistant here at Healing with Grace and currently working towards earning my master's in social work at UNR.
Thank you for introducing yourselves. I'd like to ask the first question to Wendy. Could you address the best way to adapt and cope and respond to change?
Okay, sure. I think right now, in light of everything that's going on with the pandemic, there's definitely been a lot of change, a lot of uncertainty, and with that comes anxiety. I think one way, though, to handle it is, really being aware of consumption. And when I talk about consumption, really about what are you listening to? What are the media outlets that you're listening to that can be causing a lot of anxiety? Television, news, podcasts. What are you listening to on the radio? And from a mindfulness perspective, what this means is mindfulness is all about being very present in the moment. And when we consume ourselves with really a lot of negativity, and of course we need to stay informed, but that can also cause a lot of internal dialogue where fear and the unknown and just kind of ruminating, watching and listening to things that may not best serve us. So another thing I would think to pay attention to from a mindfulness perspective is also conversations that you're having with people. Are they centered around negativity and anxiety again? So, from the mindfulness perspective is having a sense of awareness of what are you listening to, what are the conversations you're having, and thus what is it creating internally? What are these emotions and these thoughts and even body sensations that can come up? So I think, we're definitely in a different time right now. There's a lot of change that's causing anxiety. So one thing I would ask you is just to really pay attention to what are you listening to and is it serving you?
Thank you, Wendy. Would anybody else like to address that question of how we can respond and cope and adapt to change?
Well, Wendy, I think you did an absolutely excellent job in addressing the question. And I know for a lot of my clients, I have several clients who they struggle with that. One person is completely disconnected from media due to what the anxiety and stress comes from about listening to. And then the other is fully engaged into the media, and the anxiety and worry is a lot different for that person. I don't think it makes either one of them wrong or right. However, the one client watching the news is heavily attached to their job and what they do for a living. So it's important for them to keep abreast of what's going on. But I think you hit it. How much is enough?
I have a couple clients who deal with this same thing. It's either them who's constantly, getting Twitter notifications between everything that's going on politically as well as the pandemic. And then I have the partners of those people who have to draw those boundaries and say like, hey, when we're eating dinner, we're going to turn our phone off, or I'm going to turn the notification off, or I'm going to put the phone in a completely different room if there's absolutely no need for me to have it right next to me. So that's really important too.
Well, thank you guys.
And if I could just follow up with that, I think Monique and Robert, great points that you added to that. And I think, going back to that awareness is, we talked about media outlets that are negative, or, those conversations we're having with others, but, also what is that self-talk? That internal self-talk that a person can be giving themselves as well. And being, again, from a mindfulness perspective, being aware of that, and is there a way to switch that thinking? So would it be, number one, recognizing what is that internal dialogue, but taking a moment to really kind of sit with whatever's here, even if it is uncomfortable, and not changing it, not trying to change it, because that creates even more anxiety. So from a mindfulness perspective, a tip I could give people is to, be aware of what is that internal self-talk. Maybe take a breath in and a breath out, and then ask yourself, what do I need in this moment? From a self-compassionate perspective, saying, what do I need in this moment? And then simply, if it's comfortable, placing your hands over your heart and providing some kind of comfort in that moment, because maybe that's just what a person needs. That would be a tip I would give someone.
I love that. Actually, I use that often, thanks to you. And it's been really helpful for me to just ask myself, what do I need in this moment? So thank you for sharing that as well.
I just want to piggyback back on what Robert, Wendy, as well as like Monique said. I think it's really important to be mindful, and I see it as another form of self-care. So what being mindful also entails is knowing how much of, consumption you can handle, because, it's just so hard to be able to steer away from the media because it's everywhere. It's on your Twitter feed, it's on your Instagram, Facebook. So it's just so hard to turn it off. And what is unfortunate is we don't have control over, the amount of consumption that's being, presented to us. However, being mindful, asking yourself what you need in that moment, we do have that control of, how much that we can take in. And like I said, it's just like being aware of what's happening for you, what are the thoughts that come up, what emotions come up, and what do you do that, in response to the event. So I believe that, being mindful and just accepting that how you feel is what you're feeling with no judgment, I think is a really first step to change.
Yes, thank you. How could we help a person with their anxiety and fears who's been quarantined for a long time, who hasn't been interacting or socializing with anybody, learn to step into socializing at work, if they're going back to work, or if they're meeting friends, social distancing, or family, and just having that kind of fear of, I don't remember how to do this anymore, or those fears of this is so different for me now.
Well, first of all, I would first tell the person, be patient with yourself. You've been through a whole lot right now, a whole lot of transitions from, being in that rat race of a world that we all lived in, to being on quarantine for 10 plus weeks, to then returning to this new place that we don't know if we're going to need a mask. We don't know if we need gloves. We don't know what's required of everywhere you go. So be patient with yourself. Don't expect you to jump back, even if that's the type of person you are. So like me personally, I'm the type of person who goes a million miles a minute, and I expect myself to be able to jump back. But in all reality, I couldn't, and I didn't, and it's okay. So you have to be okay with that. So again, back to what Wendy said earlier about being mindful and, being in that space, even if that space is uncomfortable, just being in it, acknowledging it, and then asking yourself again, what do you need? So before you even get there, I would say just be patient with yourself, and then slowly reintegrate yourself as you would anyone else. So if you have a new dog, for instance, you can't take a dog out without any shots, right? So you have to take care of yourself just like that. So if that means you go to work and it's just too overwhelming, communicate with your supervisor and let them know, hey, I can't do this today. In order for me to be here and do this job, I need to be 100% and I can't right now. And that's okay. Or seeking help from friends, from family, from a therapist. Just take it easy. Don't give yourself a timeline. Don't give yourself a deadline. I'm very task oriented. So when it came to seeing clients in the office, for me, I thought it was going to be really easy, but then I started seeing clients in the office and it got pretty overwhelming. So I had to take a step back and look at my surroundings and decide, okay, well, what can I do, video conference or by telephone, and then where do I need to be? And then I communicated that to my supervisors. So just being open to that.
Thank you, Monique. Those are great, great advice. And does anybody else want to answer that?
I can add to that, Monique. I think you said a few really great things. One thing I heard is patience. And I mentioned I teach a program called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, and it's based off mindfulness foundations. And one of the foundations to reduce stress is having patience. And I think that's something that, we do live in a busy world, and we do get caught up going a little bit quicker than we probably should. It's just habit. But I think being patient during this time. And I also heard you mention, Monique, isolation, right? We've kind of been isolated and going back into the workplace or back into normal lives. And, part of self-compassion work really makes up 3 pillars. One being mindfulness, the other one being kindness for self and others. But the third one is common humanity. And what's happened during this pandemic is maybe living in an unnatural state for a lot of us, where we're used to having this common humanity, being connected to others. That's really something that as humans we value, we need. And so I think, being isolated for a period of time and now having to go back into what we were used to is really difficult. And I think that, it's okay to have patience. If some days are harder than others, it will be, but knowing that, that common humanity, we're all in this together. We think we're alone and not feeling maybe what our colleagues are feeling, our family members, but we do, we are all in this together, and it's okay to ask for help if it is with a therapist, and if it is joining a class, if it is connecting with your pastor, your church, whatever it may be. And I think it's okay to allow yourself permission for that. Yeah.
Wendy, it's interesting that you say that, especially when you bring up the social and faith-based point of view of it. A lot of people not being able to connect to their faith groups and worship and practice their faith the way that they used to. So I think for pastors alike, being a clergy person myself, ordained minister, many of my pastor friends and things like that, it was a learning curve. Well, what do we do now? So it was considered a crisis in the church, not only for the members, but also for those in leadership who felt the burden of how do we engage a people that's hurting when we can't physically touch them and hug them and console them. So absolutely glad that you brought it up. But one of the positive things that I've seen is oftentimes church is just one way. And not that we'll make this a whole religious forum, but church was always considered traditional. We practice, we do this. And what I love to see, the positive thing that I've seen out of this is everyone adjusting to meet the needs of the people, from leadership to congregants to people who never really maybe even practice a faith, wanted to be connected to a group. And so I'm just glad that you brought that up.
I wanted to also give the viewers some practical tips on how to calm anxiety when they're feeling flooded. Like, let's say they're stepping out of their house for the first time, or let's say they're opening the door of their office or school or wherever, to going to meet some friends. I want them to have some practical therapeutic tips so that they can utilize how to ground themselves, how to calm themselves down. If you guys have any breathing techniques, grounding techniques that could be helpful, I think that would be very important to give the viewers that they can utilize as they step into the new normal of, life without quarantine. Anybody could answer that if they have some tips that they can give.
So I know with some of my current clients that I have who have already gone back to work at the casinos that have opened up or the retail stores that have opened up, I've been doing with them some basic EFT. So it's just tapping. So you take the two fingers and you tap, like in the middle eye here in the collarbone. There's also a karate chop right here. And you can look those videos up on YouTube. They're real simple. It's something that you can do anywhere at any time. So if you're experiencing some kind of anxiety or just fears, whatever's going on in the moment, if you're driving at the light, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And it helps kind of recenter you and reground you very easily.
Wow, that's awesome. And you can look that up on YouTube, did you say?
Yeah, you can just type in just tapping, tapping your chakras, or EFT.
Great, thank you. That's awesome.
I have a few to share. One, obviously, with mindfulness comes meditation, guided meditation. So I know maybe, Kana, we could attach one of my guided meditations for the viewers to partake, do. And when I say guided meditation, sometimes people get a little nervous when you talk about meditation because, the mind goes, but it's okay to kind of take the pressure off yourself if you're going to do a guided meditation. And it's all you need is a chair and the audio recording, and you can listen to just the instructions. And I believe I've done a few for the center, one specifically around fear, which a lot of people may be feeling right now. So I would suggest, if it's not one that you listen to that I've done, find one on YouTube. There's a ton of them, and just type in whatever you're feeling. If it's anxiety, guided meditation, and just do your best to kind of quiet the mind. I would say that would be a good tip. Another tip is, really find something that brings peace. Tap back into whatever creativity, creativity really calms us down. Is it a drawing? Are you Do you like to draw? Do you like to dance? Maybe it's just not creativity, it's just reading a book, but really try and think what brings you peace and helps you through difficult feelings. So I think those are just simple tips that people could do to try and bring some relief. Yeah.
Actually, on our Instagram account, our handle is at HWG Counseling. We have a new post set up for Wendy's 5 tips or mindfulness practices of letting go of fear. And her letting go of fear meditation can be found at our website at hwgcounseling.com.
Awesome. Thank you. I think we could just address one more question on grief. Robert, maybe you could talk a little bit about, how people are having to let go of their old life and the way we used to do things.
Well, as we all know on this call, grief is different for everybody to a certain extent, and you have the Kubler-Ross stages of grief. And what I've always told people is, you can move up to acceptance in different portions, and then backtrack and still go through the scale of grief based on certain things in your life. So people who may have been disconnected and lost a family member. Just because they lived out of state. This may bring something back to them that they maybe already have gotten to a place of acceptance. And because the pandemic happened and, grieving, this could have put them back into a different space of grief. Also, those who are losing ones or who have lost ones, I lost a very good friend of mine to COVID just last month. 40-year-old young man who went to high school with me, and it was just very hard. But I was able to be part of the funeral via Zoom. What a lot of people didn't know is that funeral homes were making concessions and things to be able to allow people from all over the place to be a part. And me being in Nevada and him living in Michigan, it still gave me an opportunity to be a part and to celebrate his life. So in this time, my heart goes out to all of the students of 2020 who was not able to celebrate in the traditional way of celebrating. We've had 3 graduation celebrations in my family or friends close to me. And what was good and what I've saw, especially on social media with birthdays and graduations, people were doing drive-by graduations, going to people's houses, whole line of cars lined up, honking horns. So I think we can see some positive things there. We wasn't able to take the pictures and do a lot of the things with a lot of our classmates, and I think time will still come for that once the provisions are kind of released, the safety protocols are loosened. But just imagine being at home and you have 50 cars pulling down your block, honking horns, congratulating you. That is a outward show of gratitude and expression and celebration for a person. And so I've seen some very positive things happen, which changes the way that we look at things in traditional ways. So I think doing those things, and as Wendy would say, being mindful of what is going on and how you're being celebrated, and the fact that people are still celebrating you. I think if we focus on some of those areas, it's better.
Thank you, Robert. I'm really hearing that where we put our focus on is where if we're focusing on gratitude and what we do have, it makes things not as bad as if we just focus on the negative. And I think from what I've gotten from all of you is that, we are strong and resilient, but we got to focus on what we have, which is our health, if we have our health. And if we don't have our health, maybe you have your faith, or other resilience inside of you. But, with the fear of going back to work, focus on what you have, and be having that gratitude might help, is what I'm hearing. And I think if anybody else wants to talk about how this new world, this new normal, what we can focus on, that might be a great way to end this webinar on hope.
Well, I'll say a few words. I love what both you and Robert said. You know, especially Robert, when you talked about the graduation, and it's a different way, right? Having 50 people really kind of honking driving down the street and honking the horn. I mean, wow, what a loving, connected presence from so many people, and gratitude, right? Kana, feeling that gratitude. I would probably say another mindfulness principle is curiosity. And I would say stay very, very curious in our new world. I mean, can we switch our thinking and the way, the lens, right? The lens that we look through, our perception, from really kind of grieving the way things used to be, which of course it's normal, but can we stay curious with what's to come? And when we stay curious is where it's very much like being childlike. You're seeing it for the first time. And if you're seeing something for the first time, there's kind of excitement behind that and positivity. So I would just ask people, if you can, do your best to stay curious and open. Yeah.
Thank you. I love curiosity. It makes us young again, right? It's like, oh, wow. Yeah.
We all
Seeing
like to
things
feel young.
differently. Yeah.
And
Thank
then I was just going to add, just, kind of going back to what Robert was saying about the graduation. So like I live in an apartment complex. There's like 15 buildings with at least 24 units in each building. The community came through because, unbeknownst to us until last month, we had over 26 high school seniors that would have graduated. And so maintenance went around and put like little class of 2020 on the outside of their door or on their patio gate. And the entire community went to every single unit and just like dropped flyers, dropped gift cards, balloons, cookies, and just to see that community. Like, you don't know people, and you see that everywhere. I mean, you go to the grocery store, those essential workers. We truly found out now who the essential workers are. It's not these big CEOs that do all these fancy, great things. Our grocery store clerks, our fast food that kept us alive during quarantine because we were tired of making food, all these wonderful people. And I think that's great. That's been my biggest thing, and my family's biggest thing is, just seeing exactly how compassionate and how caring and how everyone, no matter who they are or where they come from, has just kind of come together.
Thank you, Molly.
And I want to add too, on the graduation, just recently, I was supposed to, I had my first virtual quarantine graduation, and I can feel for all of the 2020 graduates, high school graduates, college graduates, professional degree graduates, it's upsetting, and I can imagine being in that position, and, for people to put in so much work and to have their day not be experienced right now, it's upsetting, and it's, but however, coming back to like being grateful about, even though this right now I can't have this moment, I know there will be a time for me to celebrate the moment that I want to, in the way that I want to. Right now, it's okay if, I don't have the moment that I've envisioned myself dreaming of for graduation. But what I can be grateful for is that, all of the love I have from my family and friends, from delivery care packages to letters, to, FaceTime greets, drive-throughs, it just shows that, you know, no matter what happens, like as for us humans, you know, we'll always find a way to adapt and to connect to one another. And what's been helping me is I encourage myself and for clients to name at least 3 things you're grateful for each day, just to help you get through this tough time.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I think, you know, our first webinar, I hope everyone who's viewing this will take away something to help you in this new stressful and anxious time, that you could take away and help maybe find some resilience, some hope, some gratitude. If you need to see a counselor, we are here for you, and there's so many places you could contact. Reach out to your friends and family as well if you're really going through a rough patch. But thank you very much. We really appreciate you taking the time to watch this. Bye, everybody.